Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. This is going to be, let's say, a lighter session to end the day, so I'm not going to bore you to death with immersive technologies. But I really want to share the impact that immersive experiences are already having in our present, and I want to challenge you to start thinking about how these experiences can also impact your day-to-day life, your work, and I think at the end of the day, I just want you to, when you left here, be aware of these new emerging technologies, okay? So I'm going to share a bit of my work, a bit about extended reality, and yeah, so if you have questions afterwards, we can talk, okay? Okay, so let's start. So today I'm here to talk about designing reality, how immersive technologies are shaping the future of human experience. So I just want to start with this first picture. Now this was all, it just started like this. In 1962, with this crazy machine called Sensorama. So this was actually the first machine that allowed to create immersive experiences. And it, well, as you can imagine, it had everything. So you could see 3D motion pictures, it had stereo sound, the chair would vibrate, it had a fan to simulate wind, and even smell. So this was a true innovation in the 60s, because it was happening before we had proper graphical interfaces. So this was the beginning. Now look at this timeline. I have to say that the world took a bit of time to catch up. So we had the Sword of Damocles in 1968. It was the first virtual reality headset, but it was so heavy that you'd have to have cables suspended by the ceiling so you couldn't fall with the weight of the helmet. And then 30 years passed by, and we had Virtual Boy. Does anyone remember Virtual Boy? Yeah, I think Nintendo doesn't remember Virtual Boy. So they tried to release this amazing equipment where you could play games, and it was a kind of a virtual reality. But I have to say that it was too early for the market. So people were not aware of different experiences that they could have while playing games. And also, we didn't have proper headsets at the time. And at the time was only 30 years ago, so everything is happening really fast in this industry. But then when we enter 2012, something amazing happened. I bet that you already heard about Oculus Rift. It was a prototype at the time that started with a Kickstarter campaign. And it was actually the first standalone headset, so you didn't require cables to wear the headset. And after this, a lot of other headsets emerged. So we had Google Cardboard, Samsung Gear VR. We started having AR glasses, and now we have MetaQuest 2, MetaQuest 3, HTC Vive Pro. And, well, Apple Vision Pro for the ones that are Apple fans. But the idea here is that all of this development was needed. So the hardware needed to develop so we could actually start developing the software. So the hardware, when it matured, it enabled the software to actually come alive. So here I'm obviously talking about the game engines, Unity, Unreal, but I'm also talking about the software itself and the programming languages that started really to evolve and to create these experiences when the hardware matured. But talking about software, I didn't even introduce myself, right? So I normally start my presentations by introducing myself. So my name is, as you saw in the intro of the room, my name is Vilar. And actually, I entered this world of immersive experiences, but it wasn't a linear path, let's say. So at the core, I'm an engineer. I started studying electrical and computer engineer, but my world was AI and robotics. So this was just a chance of luck that I'm here, because I didn't study, let's say, I didn't study this area, but I started working in this area after my studies. So how did it happen? Basically, it's a very short story. So I just said yes to a client, and I started working in VR. That's it. So when I was studying at Technico, I was doing some freelancing gigs. So I was developing games in Unity, but they were very basic games, like 2D games for clients. And one day, one of the clients just asked me if I knew how to do a VR experience. And obviously that I said yes. And then I had to run and think about, like, at the time we didn't have ChatGPT, okay? So I just had to go over all of the books that I knew about VR, search about everything that I could find on Google, and eventually I managed to deliver that VR solution. Nowadays, I'm not really proud of it. I can do better today. But yeah, it was basically it. And then I just started developing and using the skills that I had, the programming skills that I have, to enter this area. Now, this is a very interesting area because, as you're going to see, it basically merges and has, I think it has a lot of different areas inside our industry. So here we're talking about creativity, psychology, and we're going to see that psychology part, but creativity, psychology, programming, design. So I think it's a very interesting area, and it's different from the other technologies, as we're going to see, because it has a very important component. But yeah, I did my studies, and then I founded my company. It's called Immersiv Studios. So here I am as a CEO of Immersiv Studios. And I started working as a board member at Immersive, which is the European Association for XR. So a lot of times I also talk about the European context of immersive technologies. And besides that, because I have a lot of free time, I give lectures, workshops, trainings, and I'm a guest lecturer in Coimbra University, and I teach interactive virtual reality environments. So basically what I teach is how to build a good VR experience, and my students develop them from scratch, so they do projects, I evaluate them, and basically I teach them how to really create a very good VR experience so they can be ready if they want to enter the VR market. Well, but first, today I wanted to talk, of course, about immersive experiences. But I want to make sure that every one of us, we're speaking the same language, right? So I want to ask you if anyone knows what XR is. You can raise your hand if you know. Okay. We have a few. Okay, you can raise. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So XR is actually short for extended reality. And you're going to see, well, you're going to see that I love Venn diagrams, so I think it explains everything in life, a good Venn diagram. So extended reality is actually this umbrella term that includes 3 immersive technologies, okay? So when we're talking about immersive experiences, we can be talking about experiences that are happening, well, it can be a virtual reality experience, an augmented reality experience, or a mixed reality experience, okay? So we're not just talking about VR, although we talk a lot about VR because I guess it's because of the hype that VR has comparing with other technologies. But more than that, extended reality, it's a spectrum. So like we have the spectrum of light, we have 2 opposites, right? So on one end, we have the real world, where augmented reality sits, okay? And here we are, with this technology, we are superimposing virtual elements into the real world. So if you think about simple examples like social media filters or Pokemon Go, I think everyone remembers people just catching Pokemons on the street. So that's an example of augmented reality. But with augmented reality, you can't actually interact with the objects. So you were just seeing the Pokemon in front of you, okay? And then on the other end, we have virtual reality. So we have virtual environments. So everything that happens on the other end of the spectrum was generated by a computer. The environment, the 3D models, the elements, everything that is happening inside the virtual reality experience was generated by a computer. Now, to enter or to experience these solutions, you need to wear a VR headset, right? And something really important happens when we put a VR headset, and this is the difference between these two technologies. So a phenomenon occurs that is called occlusion. So when we put the headset, suddenly we have no interaction with the real world. That's how you know you're entering a virtual reality experience. Now, at the end of the spectrum, there's a mix of it. That is why it's called mixed reality. Well, before, when Virtual Boy was releasing, we talk about all of this instead of extended reality, referring as mixed reality. But now things change because there are actually mixed reality solutions. So, as you know, augmented reality, you can't interact with the objects, but with mixed reality, you superimpose these objects and you can interact with them. As you can imagine, the development is way more complex, but it's really important for case studies, for example, in industry, in research, and of course that's when it comes to the headset, you need a different computational power, but it's also an immersive technology that is skyrocketing on the last few years. Now, another Venn diagram. Now, today I really want to talk about the added value of extended reality. And for me, we use this Venn diagram a lot at Immersiv Studios. Actually, I didn't even ask our marketeer to use this Venn diagram, just because I feel it's something that describes the whole industry. So the component of immersion here is created by these two scenarios, creativity and technology. So the creativity part comes and changes everything in terms of the way we feel, the way we connect, even for healing experiences. But then we have the technology part where we know that we can learn, have different kinds of interactions when we create, but also when we collaborate. So the message here is that immersive technology, it's a different type of technology just because it has this intersection where these experiences are happening. The first example that I really wanted to share with you about these impactful experiences, the first thing that I want to talk to you is education. So as we know, education is a pillar of our society, and we know that the education programs are not very up to date, but students are very different from the ones we were when we were at school. So they have TikTok, they have access to all of the apps, internet, and their brain just functions in a different way. So I think the idea here is that if we had immersive learning to really complement traditional methods, we could see, and there are already studies, that retention boosts, and there's a different kind of interactions in schools, and actually there are already studies here in Portugal that show that students would prefer these experiences when they make sense, of course. We're not going to replace the teacher by a VR headset, but imagine this situation, well, we could, but imagine this situation. For example, in maths, in complex subjects like maths or physics, but especially in maths, a lot of people don't have, they cannot view in 3D, so the spatial part, you know. And I had a lot, I can, but I had a lot of colleagues, like for example, the teacher would ask, okay, if we cut a cube or if we cut a sphere, what result are you going to have? And they had no idea what what was happening, what was the figure that would be the result. And we were being evaluated by that. And the person could, like my colleagues couldn't really learn how to see in 3D, but these immersive experiences can help you really visualize these 3D scenarios in maths. But also, for example, when it comes to history, I think it makes a lot of sense for the students to experience a few of the, well, I hope we don't talk about all of the wars in 2025, but experience a few other great scenarios that we have in history, so they can have a higher rates of engagement and they can remember the concepts more vividly. When we talk about immersive learning, and I have an example here to show you. So at Immersiv Studios, we're part of a European project, and we did a small VR experience. It's basically for an area called aquaponics. It's really specific. It's a very specific area of agriculture. And aquaponics works as a closed feedback loop. So basically, plants, they release a few chemicals or a few minerals that are going to benefit the fish, and they grow together. It's a bit crazy. I didn't know it before doing this project at Immersive, but it's interesting because now they're using this VR solution to go through secondary schools in Portugal and other countries, because the consortia is made of 6 different countries. And they're using our solution to help and teach these students how to take care of their own aquaponics system. So this is an example of how to turn complex topics into immersive experiences. Of course, then we can apply this to everything at school. And I hope in Portugal someone listens and adapts the curriculum. Because for me, it's crazy how we're not really using technology to benefit and to better the classes that we already give at our schools. I feel like for the last 30 years, the curriculum, it's the same, right? So another great example that I wanted to share with you, it's virtual training, okay? So virtual training, you can do it, you can do VR experiences in every area that you think of, basically. But I feel it's even more important. I'm not going to sing, by the way. I don't know how to sing. But I feel it's even more important when we talk about areas where we could actually risk lives. So basically, when you do the training and you are risking the life of someone else, if you do it in an immersive context, you already know that you're safe, that you can learn and you can be taught a lot of times, and you can just repeat it anytime that you want. Now, here's an example that is happening in Portugal. This is actually happening in Lisbon, in Chapalimau, and I know the doctor that is leading this project. So it's a project called MetaBreast. And what basically Pedro Gouveia, the doctor leading this example, this project, thought about was that augmented reality could help them raise the efficiency of their surgeries. So he's a breast cancer surgeon, and now they're using an augmented reality solution to really remove the whole tumor of patients. So how it works is that they have these 2 cameras that you can see here on the picture, and then the surgeon uses augmented reality glasses. And this way, they can superimpose the tumor on the patient's skin, and they remove the tumor all at once. So you can think of it like, okay, but is this important? Yes, it's really important, because a lot of times these cancer patients are doing 2, 3, 4 surgeries, so you can remove the whole tumor. Now, of course, that virtual training can be adapted to other fields like pilot training, but I feel that education and healthcare are really important areas to talk about, because they are main fields at our society, and they're really important to talk about. Now, another area that we talk a lot, well, at least in Europe, we talk a lot about culture and heritage, right? And we invest a lot in preserving this history that we have in Europe. Well, we're in Portugal. It's one of the countries that have most history in Europe. And my take here is that we could really try to preserve it in a different way, with different immersive experiences. And more than that, I feel like when we create immersive experiences related to culture, imagine this scenario. If you're, well, don't imagine, because I was going to say if you're at a hospital and you're sick, but imagine that you know someone that is at the hospital and he or she is sick, or you know that probably you may never travel again because of health conditions. I know a few people. So you could actually be transported to different worlds. You can go to Egypt just with your VR headset. You can learn and really live other places. And I feel this is the most important part of these experiences, to actually allow people that couldn't experience this in another way to live it. And I feel this is a very big component of immersive experiences, which is democratization of these experiences. Now, at Immersive and Immersive were supporting the XR report. Actually, we did Immersive. And it was started in 2024, and we're also doing it this year. So basically, we wanted to have a scope of what's happening in the XR industry in Portugal. Because a lot of people thought that with VR and AR, we're just developing solutions for events or entertainment, but actually, the solutions that are being developed the most are in the area of education. And you can see culture and heritage, it's second. Then, of course, we had events or entertainment, if you will. And then there are also really important industrial solutions being made in Portugal and healthcare solutions like we saw before. And this research is being done again in 2025. So I hope that until the end of the year I have the results. Now, all of these examples that I spoke to you about, they have something in common, which is this digital interaction that we can have in immersive experiences. Now, after COVID, we all started doing a lot of Zoom calls. But instead of just looking into a flat screen, we could actually collaborate in a different way. So we could be immersed in these scenarios where we could talk with each other, especially when we have colleagues from the other places in the world. And this is especially interesting when we talk about prototyping in real time. I know a few companies that do this. And it's interesting to think about how can we start to collaborate and start to have immersive experiences that make sense in our own companies, our own organizations, and that we can actually have benefits when collaborating. So we can do this even if you're working remotely. I know a lot of you like to work remotely, but you can be at the comfort of your houses and do a nice meeting with your colleague, and you have that sense of presence that you cannot have, well, or at least it's reduced when you're doing Zoom calls, you know. But when we're talking about very specific scenarios, and in this case, prototyping, talking about 3D models, I think it's really interesting for us to talk about immersive experiences. And this interaction is going to be especially true because I believe that more and more we're going to see immersive experiences in our day-to-day lives. And with that, I think augmented reality glasses are going to be, it's going to be an object that is going to be very present in our lives. I know that if you saw MetaConnect demo live with Mark Zuckerberg, you might not be very excited because it didn't go very well, but it was happening in real time. And the augmented reality glasses actually can have a lot of benefits, and we're going to see that with these objects, everything in our lives is going to be augmented with reality. So even a simple walk that you do, instead of looking into your phone, you're going to have another way of interacting, let's say, with the real world, right? So with your glasses, you don't even need to grab your phone. Yeah. So my challenge here for you is that with all of these examples, you start thinking about how can you apply XR in your organizations. So you don't need to create all of the experiences from scratch, but there are benefits that you can have in your work, in your organizations. One of them is prototyping in real life, but imagine that you can do, for example, the onboarding of people in your company, and you're coming from all of different countries in the world, and that would be a nice idea, for example, for onboarding. But yeah, there are a lot of areas in your work that probably can benefit from doing experiences in VR and also AR, especially when we talk about industry, especially when we talk about healthcare, education, and other areas. Now, when we talk about immersive experiences, it's already true that these are really engaging experiences. But a component that I really like to talk about is gamification. And I talk a lot about this with my students because virtual reality solutions, and especially virtual training solutions, benefit a lot when we add a component of gamification. Now, you could see that, well, you probably play games, or a few of you play games, and there's this psychology of games that is really interesting. So the progress part, the points, the achievements, and if you add that to a virtual training solution, you actually have an experience that it's engaging and that people want to do over and over. So you can apply gamification to all the experiences that we saw previously. Well, not for the surgeon, because you don't want him to play in real time when doing a surgery. But all of the virtual training solutions can really benefit from gamification. We do a lot, besides VR and AR, we do a lot of simple gamification solutions at Immersive, and we can see that people can actually, and want to actually engage with the brands and with the organizations when we have these gamification solutions. Now, with immersive experiences, we know that the more powerful the immersion, the greater the impact on emotion, identity, and trust. And here I'm talking about all of these experiences really have an impact because once we enter, especially in virtual reality, once we enter these worlds, we feel like we're doing the experience as we would in real life. So for the ones that are developing immersive experiences, we have a responsibility, that is to make sure that the person that is doing the experience, it's safe, that the person that is doing the experience is comfortable emotionally, because this can all trigger a lot of emotions in all of us. So I believe there are 4 core principles that are interesting to think or to explore if we talk about XR experiences. So the first would be empathy, and this is not just being nice to each other, but empathy here really, when we start designing these experiences, means thinking of the experience on the user shoes. So VR experiences, to target VR experience, we always talk about who is the organism. Are you going to have a narrator? Are you going to be the person that it's experienced in real life? Who is going to experience your solution? And then once you know it, you need to make sure that the perspective is aligned from the user view. And then, of course, we need to talk about inclusion. So a lot of times we create experiences that they are so general, you know. We just think about our own world, so we don't think about other people that might want to be part of these experiences, and they are left out. So, for example, I'm not going to point fingers, but I'm just going to talk about a very simple exercise, that is, If you're developing an immersive experience and you're doing the experience while standing, for example, and someone that is doing the experience needs to be seated because he or she is in a wheelchair, you need to make sure that the experience, so the cameras, everything is going to adapt. And this is basic. And a lot of experiences that I see don't have these simple concepts in mind, okay? So of course that we want to create experiences that are engaging, that are fun, but for me this is the basis of building an immersive experience. And then a lot of times we don't talk about data, but I feel like we should talk about data more and more because we're in Europe. Of course we have the AI Act that at the time doesn't impact at all extended reality, okay? But I feel there needs to be a transparency when talking about data that is collected. So as we have websites with cookies and we accept everything because we just do it, right? There should be a way of us to communicate when we develop these immersive experiences. What is the data that is being collected? Because as you know, biometric data, we collect millions of points when a person is using a VR headset. And I feel that we're not talking enough about it. But yeah, but if people experience your solution and they ask you, you should know what you're collecting in real time. And a lot of times when we use other plugins inside our experiences, for example, plugins that measure the engagement of VR experience, they know the data that is being collected, and that data, it's the user's property, right? So we need to make sure that if people ask the question, we have answers for it. And the first one is just safety. At the end of the day, of course, headsets, and we didn't really talk about augmented reality headsets, but it feels a little bit more safe because we can see the world we're in. But when we talk about VR headsets, of course there's also a safety zone, but we also have a responsibility for emotional safety. So if you're creating an experience that can be triggering for someone, you should take that into account, and you should take that into mind. So the question here that I want to ask is, how can we as creators or people that are developing these worlds can start building experiences the right way? And the right way is just really thinking before developing. Because immersive experiences have this component of immersion, of the emotional part, it's not just developing. We need to take a lot of other elements into account. So these are just my takeaways that I feel that are important when developing experiences. So the first would be prototype fast. And I feel this can be a bit contradictory, but the idea here is that immersive experiences, they are being developed in real time, you know? You fail, you try, you do it again. Sometimes the experience doesn't work. But there are solutions that you can only understand if it works or not, if you just prototype it and you experience it on the headset, on the phone, and just start to see if the experience has the result that it should have. And then I cannot stress this enough, that's why I think I'm in the right place today, but we need to blend people here in XR. So extended reality is a great industry because we don't have only developers. And I feel like a lot of people think that people in XR are all geeks, but we have artists, we have engineers, we have designers, and we have all kinds of positions or roles in extended reality. So for example, one of my friends, she's from Canada, and her job is hosting events in virtual environments. So, and she's not from, her background is not from, she's not from engineering, she's not from development. So there are different roles for everyone. And if you think XR it's interesting, I would suggest you to look into different positions and different roles that can be filled. And the other message that I want to share with you is that when we create immersive experiences, we should focus on the feeling. Now, remember the Venn diagram, we have the emotion, we have the technology, but the emotion part is really important. And immersion only happens when you really think that you are experiencing it, not in the real life, but you, for a moment, just forget that you are in a virtual world or you are in a virtual experience and you just go with it, okay? And this component of immersion doesn't depend on having very detailed 3D models or everything really a replica of the real world. No, it's a result of creating actions and behaviors that we're expecting in that solution, okay? And a lot of different elements and simple ones that I share with my students are, for example, using cues and little sound effects, because I feel like sound really adds a layer of immersion to experiences. So yeah, immersion, it's not a feature. Actually, it's a characteristic of the VR system, not of the experience, okay? But at the end of the day, it's emotion. So when we build these immersive experiences, we need to start thinking of who is the target, and then knowing what the target is, what is the emotion, what is the feeling that I want those people to really feel at the end of the day. And my first message here is to design ethically. We don't talk a lot about ethics. I don't know why, especially in Portugal. We need to talk a little bit more about ethics, just because we need to talk about the responsibility we have when creating these systems. So, for example, at Immersiv Studios, if we start thinking about a solution that we're going to put into the world, well, it's our child, we have responsibilities. At least we feel it like that. So the idea here is you should protect users, not from your technology, but from the solution you're doing. So it should be inclusive, you should take people into account, of course. We cannot create the perfect solution, but this needs to be thought of when we think about the design of the solution. So it's not just a job for the designer or for the developer, it's a job for the person that is leading the project, for the creative director, for the project manager, for the person that closes the deal and then is transmitting the information to the team. And at the end of the day, I just want to share that when you're working in XR, you need to stay curious. Of course, it's the same when you're working in tech generally, but as you saw in the first timeline on the second slide that I shared, is that, okay, the world took a bit of time to catch up when we're talking about hardware, but then software evolved really fast. And things are evolving really fast because Oculus Rift only appeared 13 years ago. And now we have these amazing headsets and Apple Vision Pro. No, I'm kidding. So we have these amazing headsets and immersive experiences and mixed reality experiences that were only possible on the last 5 years. So, of course, the tools will change, the engines might change, and here we're only talking about American engines. Someday I hope we have European ones. But your mindset shouldn't change. So the mindset here for someone working in these immersive experiences is to be fast, it's to be curious, but you need to be always learning. Because everything is going to change since the beginning of this year until the end of the year. All year. So final message to you is that we started with that very strange machine, Sensorama, but now we walk this way until 2025, and we have spatial computing. So if you really want to start thinking about immersive experiences and start building it, we need to have these conversations, talk about ethics, talk about humane experiences, and more than talking about tech, we need to talk about emotion. Because only with these conversations, we can make sure that we're actually extended reality the right way. So thank you. I think we have time. We have time for questions. Can we? Yeah. Okay. Does anyone here wants to make a question of the examples that I showed, of what I do at my work? I wasn't really specific into the technical part because I was not sure about the target and the people that are going to have here at the audience. But yeah, if you have any question that you want to make, here is your, yeah, they have a microphone for you. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
It's just a curiosity, but in your opinion, why are we not yet using Google Glasses or devices like that in day by day?
So you're talking about augmented reality?
Yes.
So the let's say simpler ones. Well, augmented reality glasses still have their paths to walk, right? So we saw a lot of development on the virtual reality headsets, but with augmented reality, so they're aiming, the manufacturers, for simpler glasses like the ones we have, and then we can superimpose these elements. But the truth is, even with Meta, if you look into the glasses, you don't have the operating system on the glasses because it's still too hard to create the hardware and make it look cool. Again, I don't want to go again to Apple Vision Pro, but Apple Vision, for example, they did a kind of a mixed reality headset, but it's really heavy, okay? And they couldn't make it smaller. So I think we're going to see an evolution in the next, I would say, 5 years, because we're going to have ways of making this computational power smaller, and then we can have augmented reality glasses that actually have features. But then again, I also think it could be something that we see in Portugal, let's say, because we're a bit conservative in wearing these new glasses. But I guess when everyone uses, we'll catch up as well. Thank you. Okay, another question. Yeah? Okay.
So, about the immersive experiences, you talk about vision, you talk about hearing, about the sound, but for me, an immersive experience will have all of the senses. What can you say about the touch and the smell, and how can it improve the immersive of those experiences?
Yeah. So the component of immersion, if we go to the definition, well, I feel like I'm the professor now because I teach the definition of this. But if we talk about the component of immersion, it's really this way of you forgetting that you're in a virtual space or in your virtual experience, and that can happen. So you don't need the 5 senses for that to happen. That's what I'm saying. Of course, we have a haptics tool. So we have, for example, vests. We have Tesla Suit, which is a company led by George Campbell, and they have a very known suit where they use it for training. So they have examples with firefighters that they go to train, and so they experience the heat and and the fire as well. So you can have, of course, those tools like haptics, and you can wear gloves, and you can have vests where you can have different kind of emotions. But I feel like the component of immersion is really you dissociating from the real world, okay? And there are also other components that you can add to the headsets that release smell. So it's a little bit kind of the Sensorama, but it's way more modern. Of course that you can have all of the 5 senses, but at the end of the day, it's just this concept of you really forgetting that you're in a virtual world. And for that, what I'm saying is that you don't need a very detailed model, a very detailed environment. You need to be able, so you need to have agency. It's something that we talk a lot about in virtual reality. And you need to have the option to really create behaviors on those environments. So even if you have the 5 senses and you cannot, for example, walk when you want to do something in the virtual environment, they'll be not immersive enough, you know. So I feel like agency, it's a more important component for immersion than the 5 senses. But of course that we can use those tools like the haptic vests and the haptic gloves to have a more immersive experience. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else? You want to make a question, no? No? Okay. Okay, guys, if there's no other questions, if you want, we can talk now. So thank you for coming.